Figuring out Arabella's rig, her spars, her rigging, her sails has been a real challenge. If we want to do it traditionally, how Acorn did it back in the day, it's pretty easy to replicate, and there's a lot of folks who are willing to help us do that. If we want to use the gaff rig but modernize it, that's proven to be a little bit trickier to figure out. And we're going to go meet a couple folks that I think are going to help us figure that out. So Keith Mitchell, who you can find him on Instagram and YouTube as Shipwright Skills, is going to help us out with the spars. With how much work we have to do before launch, it's going to be great just to have an extra set of hands and have somebody overseeing the spars, so I don't have to figure out wall thicknesses and crunch all those numbers, and we can farm that out to Keith. And we got a really interesting email from a chap by the name of Robbie Doyle, who's the owner-founder of Doyle Sails. And I had a nice talk with Robbie last week, and he is interested in designing and sewing the sails. And he's done some pretty amazing stuff. And after my phone conversation with Robbie, I'm really excited. I think he's going to have some different ideas. The guy doesn't seem to be afraid of thinking outside the box, and I like that. We have the pedestal for mounting the staysail.
Oh, cool. That's beautiful. Look at that.
Yeah,
Very
Victoria
cool.
was bronze bow rollers.
Yeah, they built them pretty nice back then.
There's we actually met the guy who cast it.
Oh, really?
If we can get to the end of the bowsprit.
Oh, where is it? It's way out here somewhere.
Yeah, when we talked to Rick, he's like, "Does she still have the star cap?" I was like, yeah,
She
does.
still has it. Yeah, there's beautiful hardware all over the place on this thing.
Yep. This is the main boom. So yeah, we got a bunch of beautiful fittings that we can reuse from that. I think this is solid. It sounds it and feels
Sounds
it.
solid. I'm looking at this fastener too, which would probably be through bolted if it were hollow, and
yeah.
it looks like it's just screwed in. I don't know though for a fact, but it feels solid. So hopefully we can reclaim some material out of this.
So then this is the gaff, and judging by the knot that's going through there, I also believe that's a solid spar.
Yep, looks like it.
So I trust your judgment on how best and where to fit these. So if you pull the measurements for the main boom, and this will fit for the main boom, and we just give it a sand and a cleanup and a couple of repairs, great. If it seems like it's going to be a little too close, or we really want to take some more meat off it and get rid of some of the dings and dents, this could get shaped down to become the mizzen boom.
Okay.
It could get cut in half and become the two gaffs.
A lot of options.
A lot of options. So I am perfectly happy for these smaller spars to make their way up to Vermont with you, and
Cool.
for you to work on those as your leisure. Because I think even the boom here, transporting that, we can strap it to the roof of your Subaru and away you go.
Yep.
Not a big deal.
Yep.
Were you surprised to hear from me when I reached out and asked if you'd be interested in spars?
I was. I don't know how you found me, but I was glad you did. I was when you contacted me, I thought, oh, that would be a really cool thing to be a part of, because it is like a real start to finish homemade thing that every step that went into it, and it's cool to work with the builder of the boat. Sometimes you don't get to it all. You might just build the spars for a boat and never even really see the boat, or the boat might have already been built years and years and years ago. So it's kind of cool to see it progress with the entire thing. So I was excited to be involved for sure. When you're building a boat from scratch, especially like you are by yourself, you kind of have to be into every single little aspect, and it helps when you're a crazy person like me who likes to do all the different things. This is pretty ideal because you do get to do all the different things on a boat. It's pretty fun. Keeps you interested.
All right, so many years ago, I asked the family if I could harvest one of the spruce trees my great-grandfather planted. And my grandma told me that my great-grandpa would not be happy about the tree being cut down, but he would be happy about the tree being cut down to become the mast of the boat. So I got the permission, borrowed my friend Tom's truck and chipper, and I climbed the tree, limbed it, and dropped it. We milled it up into boards. You can grab a tape measure, but I think they're about 2 inches, give or take. And then they've been stacked up here and stickered and tarped for several years now. So they should be as dry as they're going to get air dried. And it's just a big flitch out of the log. So there's I think 2 logs worth here, and if you were to put them together, you could make, really nice book matched. Since it was a yard tree, they trimmed all the lower branches when the tree was pretty young. So we've got some pretty good long runs of some pretty clear stock to work with, and then we'll have to just start kind of dodging knots or putting them in places that they're not going to be too much of an issue if they're small.
And this is spruce, correct?
This is Norway spruce.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, we
So
like spruce.
It's not as good as Sitka spruce. It may not be as good as Douglas fir, but
Hey, it's what you have.
that's what we have. Yep.
Spruce is nice because it's very strong for its weight. I think for its weight, stronger than steel. It bends a lot, so it makes a really good spar. If you picture that spar bending many millions of times over its life, you want something that's resilient, and that's what a spruce tree is it's very resilient. You could have a really dense hardwood mast that would pull the sail up and would look good. It'd be easy to sand, I guess, but it would be so hard that it would eventually crack, and it would also weigh a lot. Long ago, they used to just use the entire tree when it was big enough. They would use the entire tree as the spar and just, peel it down and go for it.
I don't have a building that's heated where we can do a 40-foot spar. I don't know about you.
No, that kind of space is at a premium for sure.
And then I think we can kind of work down through the spars and the sides. So if we do the main mast, and then probably the main boom, and then the mizzen boom, go down to the gaffs, and the bowsprit is the one that I'm least concerned about. We can glue that up we can even do it out of pine, it would be fine. And as we're learning to sail, and as Harold Burnham said, if you're going to run into a seawall, you do it bowsprit first. It's the most sacrificial of all the spars.
This is true.
So I'm okay with that one not being, if we have to make some compromise in material choice or whatever, I think that's the place to put it.
Yeah, keep all this nice wood for the main mast first, and then go from there.
And this has all been under this arched roof like this the whole time, so it
should be very seasoned.
Should be very seasoned. Tons of airflow going through. It's been totally out of the weather. So I feel real good about those.
Yeah, I love working with spruce because it's light. So when you go to put it through the tools, it's not such a hassle like the big heavy oak you've been using.
Oh, yeah, and the locust.
It's a little bit of extra weight overhead compared to what I guess would be a more modern design. Bermudan rig or a Marconi rig is probably what they would have called it at that time, depending on where you were. So, maybe the gaff rig might only be that tall, compared to you've got all this extra area. But all you really get out of that height is this little teeny triangle. So you're not necessarily gaining a whole lot. If you look at how wide the sail is up here, if you drew this triangle out, this mast would be mega tall compared to that one, like way taller. So you end up getting quite a bit of sail area out of a gaff rig, which means that you get quite a lot of power out of a shorter mast, which transfers to if you've got the hull of the boat and the mast poking out of it, the more pressure you put on the top, the more the boat heels over, right? If you've got like a little bit of weight up high, it actually has a huge impact down low. So the shorter you can make that mast, or the lighter you can make the mast at the top, the better. So why not just cut the entire top off completely? Well, it makes it a little bit more complicated because you definitely have more rigging to get this thing up in the air and get your big four-sided sail tight compared to this. But it's actually a little bit more versatile One, because it isn't so tall, you're not going to get blown around so much. In big wind, you can actually run a little bit more sail maybe. Two, you can, if you got into real trouble, this gaff, you could loosen this, leave this raised, and do what they call scandalizing the gaff, which is where you let this gaff fall down, and now all of a sudden you've got a much smaller space, which, you know, can be a big bag. If you're facing the wrong direction, it could balloon out and be a problem, but that is kind of a common thing that you can do. So we're looking at the main mast, which is 41 foot, 11 inches tall. It's about 7 inches, I believe. Yeah, 7 inches, as a pretty straight shaft up until about here, where it starts to taper a little bit, and then it gets more and more rapid as it gets to this very fine tip up here. The reason to do that is, one, you don't need all this extra strength of the big thick mast up there. Two, it's less windage, so when the wind hits this big 7-inch stick, that's a lot different than the 2.5-inch stick up here. And the third reason is weight. So you end up shaving a whole lot of weight off the top by making it taper. I guess the fourth reason is for looks. It's a bit of an optical illusion. So when you stand on the deck and look up, it makes it so that the mast really tapers, and visually tapers too. If it was just a straight dowel, it would still work, but it wouldn't look as good. It would weigh more, and it would be kind of a waste of strength up here where you don't need it. Then there's the boom. So the boom serves to take, you know, the forward leading edge of the sail and stretches it back, keeps this bottom part as tight as you need it. You can loosen this a bit and get more and more sail shape out of this. Being that it's a gaff, you can actually adjust all kinds of stuff. You can adjust, you know, how tight this is up here. You can adjust how tight this is up here. You can adjust how tight this one is going this way by changing this and changing that. So you can make the curve go in several different directions at once. It always stays tight here because you need kind of a control point, but that's kind of how that works. And then when there's two masts, you get this wing thing happening twice, and the wind actually can travel between them or across them, and you can get this sort of slot effect where this one actually can amplify the power of this one. So, you know, you're just trying to trick the wind to go around the sail or however you need it to go. There's also the bowsprit. So the bowsprit will attach to, I don't know, do you have a Samson post going in this?
Yep.
So the bowsprit sort of works to keep, one of the things it does is it actually keeps the mast up by tensioning this cable that makes this big triangle, right? If you picture this big triangle tensioned, if you tightened up really high on here, this bowsprit would go up with it. So you have head stays and bob stays and all sorts of different things going on up front to try to keep this triangle the same shape at all times. Why would you do that? A lot of boats don't. A lot of boats don't have a bowsprit. Most modern boats don't. Maybe they use them for a spinnaker or something like that sometimes, but most modern boats, the boat ends here, the sail ends there, and this mast would be further back to get a big enough triangle to pull the boat.
A lot has changed since this rig was drawn. So Acorn drew this gaff rig in 1959. So we have different sailcloth, we have different materials we can use for shrouds. We certainly have different materials that we can use for lines. Blocks are incredibly different than they used to be. We are headed out to go meet with Robbie Doyle, and Robbie Doyle is interested in looking at this old gaff rig with a modern set of eyes and seeing what we can do to set it up as a really awesome adventure, single-handing, going to wild places machine. Because right now, she would be a pretty tough boat to single-hand if you built her with the rig as you see here. But I can't wait to hear what Robbie Doyle has to say. And I don't think he's going to try to just make a traditional rig. I think he's willing to, but I get the impression that he kind of maybe is interested in the different challenge of taking an old rig like this for a heavy displacement cruiser and seeing what modern things can do for it. Pretty cool, huh?
How many square feet do you suppose this is?
I'd say a few.
Yeah.
I would say a few square feet. We're supposed to meet Robbie here at 1?
Oh, Acorn or Arabella?
Correct.
That's us.
Yes, that's
Big
us.
fans. Yeah. let me go see if I can grab it for you. All right?
Great, awesome, yeah, thanks.
Hey.
Hello, hello. Robbie?
Robbie, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
I'm KP.
This is KP,
KP, nice to meet you.
and this is Keith, who's going to be doing the spars.
How you doing? Let me just plug this in before I lose my computer and all the things I put together for it. Yeah. I'm semi-retired. I really don't come into work every day. I come in maybe once a week, but I now design most of the high-end sails at home, which is exactly what I started doing for Ted Hood 50 years ago when I first got into sailmaking. So it's pretty ironic. Well, I read that article, and it was one Sunday morning. I said, "This is crazy." And then when I actually called up Steve and I got talking, and it was really happening. Over the years, we've been approached by many people that want to sail around the world. And when you build us sails, we'll advertise you all over the world and stuff. And the answer, we pretty much said no, because one, I didn't want to be responsible for some of these people going off around the world. And so, so we've tried to stay away from giving away what we do for our living free. But then I saw this project and saw what Steve was doing. I said, if I was full-time working now, I wouldn't have jumped, because just putting the 3D model together took more hours than I would have had in the old days. This is, I haven't really analyzed what the right shape for everything will be in the leads, but this is what the shape you'll be seeing looks like.
It's nice. Wow. I like those topsails. Gives it kind of a modern.
Well, yeah, it looks like you see the square top over there on the right
Yeah.
side. That's what it does, and it makes it more efficient.
And again, if you have a little more mass, go a little bit higher, and then the tops will go a little bit higher.
Yeah, we definitely can accommodate that.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, would it be very advantageous to put the main and the mizzen on tracks instead of doing hoops? I mean, hoops to me just seemed like there's a lot less to get stuck and go wrong and whatever else than with a track and potentially,
Tracks
I don't
are
know.
pretty predictable. I mean,
Yeah.
people sail around the world with them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Tracks would be a lot easier.
Yeah.
It really would be.
Back edge of the mast wants to be straight then in that case.
Um,
For the track, for the sail tension or reefing and all that, right? That's what we're talking about.
It makes handling the sail a lot better.
In the drawing, I was just noting that all these spars, he's tapered both the fore and aft, rather than having like a straight face on one of them, which is a little odd in the drawings.
Yeah, the tracks, like
But-
you can sail upwind, the tracks will bend.
Yeah.
The aluminum will. The track will add a little stiffness to your mast, actually, which could help I guess you're going to make a hollow main mast, so the track would add strength to it. So the track, I think, does make things easier.
That's an Antal car. That would be the size that would go on your boat,
Okay.
and that actually probably too. That enables you to use a tristle on that track, I think.
Yeah.
They have a couple separate gates.
Yeah.
So what
Anyway,
you have is
yeah.
the slides come down when you put the sail away, and then there's a gate above that gate, and then
Okay.
you can put the tristle directly onto that track.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So now, are you an engineer by training at all?
No.
No, you seem to have a sense of it, which is,
I grew up on a farm,
yeah.
so I have fixed and broken a lot of things over the years. I'm also a climber and done a lot of rigging.
Okay.
So like climbed up trees and dismantled them and roped them down over buildings
All
and
right.
set them up so that this breaks and then that swings and drops over here and all of
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So in terms of like rigging and lines and forces and
Okay.
like I hear all the time about the tremendous forces in sailing, and then I go look at how the sailboats are built, and I'm like, these aren't tremendous forces compared to my 90 horsepower backhoe. These are very, very fine forces.
Yeah. Well, in this boat they have, some of the projects we do,
Yeah.
there are plenty. That one's not too bad to load, because everything's spread out over yard arms and stuff. It's the tall, narrow sails that
Yeah.
they're trying to sheet in really hard. They're made of carbon that load things up. So, but you know the advantage then of like Vector and a Spectra halyards.
Yeah, I've used Dyneema climbing for years. So
Dyneema's
yeah.
not great for halyards and stuff though, because it does
Well, I'm just saying in terms of
it's for
the
straight.
modern synthetic
all
fibers
your,
like
all
that.
your
Yeah.
sheets and stuff you want Spectra, you just keep them light, easy to handle.
Yeah.
They'll never break. But the halyards I like to see use Vectran or Vectran Spectra combination.
Okay.
Because it just doesn't creep with time.
Yeah.
And people think, well, I don't really care about that much halyard tension or losing it. Well, the problem is, what happens is you lose a little tension, you get wrinkles in the luff, and then you get load lines. Then you get loading points on each hoop or each slide. And that, loads up that little point. Point loading is everything you want to avoid in any engineering situation.
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and like I said, the only spars that we've done so far are the mizzen.
Yeah.
So everything is still really fluid, which has been, really fun to have everything so fluid and all the options be options. But honestly, every time that we've gone and talked to a professional in the industry, we keep running into issues because we would go talk to, say, a sailmaker, and they'd be like, all right, well, what's your rigging and spars? Well, we haven't done the rigging and spars yet. We're trying to figure all that out together. And they're like, okay, well, go get your rigging and your spars figured out, and then come back and we'll figure out the sails.
No,
Okay, cool. And then you go talk to like a rigger, and you're like, all right, we're trying to figure this out. And they're like, oh, well, what do your sails look like? Go figure out your sails, and then we'll figure out your spars.
The truth is, the projects I've done my whole life, I like it to do it all together.
Yeah.
That's the only way it works. Like this rig never existed before we did it. We spent a year building test models and all sorts of my son's PhD work at Stanford that he did all this with CFD to analyze. Well, like the owner actually helped him with it, and he wanted to make sure it worked. The wind tunnel told him one thing, said it would work, but we did the same sort of study they did in the wind tunnel. We did it with computer fluid dynamics, and the answers came out similar for sure.
Okay.
But my son was able to come up with what wasn't able to be incorporated in that one, but in later ones, changing the shapes of the three different masts, the shape of the sails on the three different masts, those are all the same. You could actually make it quite a bit more efficient, like 20% more efficient upwind, which is a big difference. You make believe it or not, the forward mast a little rounder, middle one a little flat, much flatter, and the back one a little bit flatter. And that was what was optimal.
So do all these yards, for lack of a better term, then
They define the
bend?
shape of those sails.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
they
you
do
can-
bend a little bit.
Okay.
But no, they're a fixed shape. They don't bend much changing chord section. They bend up and down. Like if you don't have them supported, they do bend a little bit. Like and those masts bend like 4 or 5 meters off the leeward in a real breeze. Wow. No, it's
Are they aluminum?
what?
Are they aluminum?
No, carbon.
All carbon
Yeah.
fiber.
Yeah,
How long is that thing?
that's 300 feet.
Was it the tallest rig in the world when it was built?
Mirabella 5 was,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
And now the next tallest rig was Sailing Yacht A, which we built all the sails for. But quite frankly, the guys took all the pictures of that around because it's one of the Russian boats that were seized.
Took them all down.
Yeah. Now this is a brand new sewing machine. I didn't even know it was here. It just arrived today. This will be installed in a pit, not this pit, but another pit we're going to actually have to dig is where they want to put it. It's hydraulically run. The needle's air cooled because sewing these big sails, the needle would heat up so much it would actually melt the thread. And sometimes it'd melt the thread, damage it, but not break it, which is the worst because then it gets in the sail.
Yeah.
So we actually have a lubricant, silicone lubricant, and air cooling the needles when you sew these big sails. And he's pulling it. He's got a puller, but we also like to pull the sail through more evenly.
Oh, pulling the sail through instead of
Yeah.
pushing it through.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So for like the sails for Arabella, how many hours you would go into actually sewing those sails? Design work aside, just cutting and stitching and making.
To produce those sails would take us about 2 weeks of probably 4 people, something like that.
Oh wow,
Something.
quite a bit of time.
Yeah, the handwork and stuff adds up. Actually, the computer calculates it, and I'm not the right guy. Chris or Tim or one of these guys could tell you better than I could if they looked at them.
So when was the last time you were sewing in a pit?
even earlier this spring, I was just doing some repair work on a sail that had to be done overnight.
Nice.
So I still can jump in and do it.
Good, good.
None of these guys like me to do it because I always leave their machines untuned and not set the way they had them, so that's not a good thing.
Does one person typically run the same machine?
They try to do it that way.
Right, yeah.
So. And then here in the corner is one of the few sail lofts in the world set up with a really proper washing facility. And then you can hang the sails up and dry and then fold them up and stuff like that. So that's nice for winter service. Okay, so there's the second biggest sloop ever in the world. That's Perseus Cube. And that has the biggest sail in the world, the spinnaker we built for them.
So how many square feet would that spinnaker be? Oh, you knew I was going to ask.
I know, and I never know those answers.
So it seems like you guys kind of do it all, from small sails
do.
right up to the biggest
Yep.
and craziest, most modern ones.
Yep. Yeah, partly because we seem to take on any project, the crazy ones. So our engineering approach to sailmaking allows us to scale up and down really well. So it makes us not afraid of anything. Maybe ignorance does helps in that regard too.
Hey, one of my favorite quotes is, "Some of the world's greatest feats were accomplished by people not smart enough to know they were impossible."
Exactly. I'm a living testament to that. In fact, I'm alive as testament to that.
You look so thrilled right now.
Sure. do I stand here?
That's horrible.
It's horrible.
So what do you think of Robbie Doyle?
That was awesome. That was so interesting and exciting, and it's on.
Yeah, he seems very excited to,
Yeah,
he seems into the challenge.
definitely. I mean,
It's no Maltese Falcon, but it doesn't seem to be something that he's been asked to do very often.
I think that's why he's excited about it, right? Like, Doyle Sails is like some of the fastest boats, and some of the, like, every boatyard in the country will have Doyle Sails somewhere in the docks.
Yeah.
He's seen it all, but he hasn't seen Arabella.
And I'm pumped about Keith. He seems like a great fit for the spars.
Absolutely.
Like, he was always so chill to talk, and I felt good about that. But
Yeah.
actually having him come down and meet, and I think it's a really solid plan. And I'm
Yeah.
gonna breathe a good sigh of relief when that main's done. That's
Absolutely.
it's a big thing to check off the list.
Yeah. I mean, Keith is super skilled. And then to have Keith go in with us to talk to Robbie is like
Yeah,
the
those two can
perfect
talk
combination.
and work things out.
And Robbie's just experimental approach to making sails is like, well, it's cool you're keeping the gaff, and you and I were like, he wants to keep the gaff?
Yeah, that kind
Great.
of surprised me a little too.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm psyched. I think it's gonna be great. He added some topsails. Should we reveal that?
Well, this will be at the end, so that's all revealed.
Oh yeah, okay. Sorry.
Thanks for watching today, and we'll be checking in down the road with Keith and the spars and with Robbie and company as they begin to sew the sails. And right now you can go over to see Bob Emser's new video on the art of boat building, where he finishes the line drawing, develops the table offsets, and begins lofting Arabella's tender, Victoria.